Hey, Dr. Ramsey, looks like we're right at 4 o'clock and we have lots of people already watching with us. I know it's going to be a great session today. I think we're talking about training new lambs and showmanship regarding sheep. You're going to have some good help there at Pierce Pavilion today, so let's get started.
Hey, Dottie, we're glad to be back. While we're waiting on everybody to get hooked up and online with us today, let's do a little quiz from couple weeks ago. We just got our lambs. We're starting them. We've got them home. Let's have everybody respond and tell me what vaccination do they need to be giving to protect their lambs.
Hey, that's a good question, Dr. Ramsey, and I know that we're going to have a really engaged audience with us today on Facebook. We already have over 40 people tuning in with us. I have had them commenting where they're watching from, so we're going to get that as well as the question you just posed to them. And I know that they're going to have some great answers and be right on point with us this week. So it looks like you have some sheep there to show us, and we're ready to hear from you.
All right, we're ready to go. Well, we're going to pretend we just got our lambs. What are we going to do to get them halter broken and ready for show? And there's a lot of different things, a lot of different ways that you can do this. First thing we want to do is get them halter broke and get them trained where they will lead. And so I've got here several different kind of halters. And so we're going to start with the first one. If you're going to be in this for the long haul, these halters that are a nylon halter with a chain underneath the jaw piece, they're a little more expensive, but they're going to last you a long time. And as these lambs get older and we start doing more with them, it doesn't take long if we're tying them up every day with one of these kind of halters that they start chewing on them. And so then we're having to replace halters all the time. So I really like these. It's aggressive underneath their chin. When you're moving them and they are coming, it relaxes. It's good to take to shows. I always like to have a snap on them because that way I can wrap it around the post and snap it up pretty tight and snug. And so I don't have to worry about that. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Another kind of halter that we have is a different type of nylon halter. These are really nice. The thing that you got to worry about is your sheep chewing them. Again, this one's got a good clip on the end. It's relatively short. It may not be the best one to get them started, but if you're just going to a jackpot show or something, these work really good. And I like these. They're very soft on their head and on their nose, because that's one thing you want to watch for in some of our off breeds, our crosses, our South Downs, that we don't want to get a lot of scar tissue up here on the bridge of their nose that will distract from classification. So hopefully you guys watched our classification video last week. If you didn't, you can go back on this same website and check that out. So if you're going to show fine wools and crosses and those, it would be a great thing to do. Our other kind of halter is, again, another nylon one. This one's a little smaller, okay, in diameter. It works really good, especially on our young lambs. Again, I've got a chain, or excuse me, a hook on the end. And so we're going to demonstrate how to use those. And then just a longer halter that I like these kind. They're very soft and pliable. And that's one thing you want to look for in a halter, and that is very soft and pliable. We get into some of these, like this one, it's a little larger diameter. It's a little thicker rope. Again, it's a nylon rope. I don't really like these, Dottie, because when we start putting them on, you can see they get kinked up very easy and they tend to get loose. And so one thing you want to watch for when we're putting these on our lambs, the first thing we're going to do is make sure we have a hold of our lamb when we put our halter on for the first time. You don't want to tie them up and walk off and leave them. One, they can jump around, hurt themselves. And then the other thing, especially with this kind of halter, that it's not good and tight, that it comes off, okay? And pretty soon, you've got this part around the lamb's neck. So we start off with our halter position. This is one of the things we're going to start off with, okay? It doesn't matter what kind of halter you want to use. We've got a yellow one on here. And this is always a pet peeve of mine when we're going down. There's a right and a wrong way to put a halter on, okay? And so on this halter, we have the part that comes underneath his jaw, the part that goes behind his ears. And so what you want to remember is the part that tightens up goes underneath his jaw, and it always is going to come out on the left side, okay? when I go to shock shows and walking around, it's amazing how many halters that I see that are not put on right. So we want to position this about 1 inch underneath his eye, and then we're going to pull it snug. And it's very important that these halters fit. And so as these lambs grow, we're going to have different type of halters, because if they don't fit good here on the bridge of their nose, you'll see this piece start riding up into their eye. And so if we get this up into their eyes, they're not going to want to walk, okay? And so we always want, one more time, the halter to come out on the left side. So everybody takes note of that. So when I see you at a stock show, I don't have to stop you and make you turn your halter around. So what we want to do is to get our halter on, and we're going to start halter breaking this sheep. So there's a couple different ways that we can do. We can just pull, set back in the pen, and put just a little pressure on the other one. And pretty soon he'll kind of quit fighting and he'll want to walk forward. And it's just one of those deals, you get them in the pen and you start working with them. There's no big secrets to that. But another thing that we're going to do, the same time that we're teaching him to walk on a halter, we're going to keep our hand underneath his jaw, and we're going to do that a couple different times too, and tap him on the tail. One trick that we've learned is that, you know, oftentimes you'll get a lamb, or you maybe have a ewe lamb left over that you've shown, or leftover lamb for whatever reason, or this is the first lamb you get and you get him halter broke. But oftentimes if you've got one, once you get one halter broken, it's oftentimes let that lamb teach this one. And so what we're going to do is just kind of start walking. And a lot of times I'll hold on to both of them, and so they think he's got a buddy right here. And so as we start going, you know, you kind of get somebody to walk behind and tap them. And a sheep is naturally likes to follow. And so after a while, it doesn't take long, and I found this way works pretty good. He's learning how to lead on a halter, but he's really following this other sheep. So you can tell when we started, he didn't really know what the halter was. He's never been on a halter before, okay? But he's going to follow his buddy here, and pretty soon we can have him going. And so it just takes a little time and effort, but pretty soon, when you've got one to help train the new one, it can kind of speed up the process. So those are a couple little tricks. After we walk him, do a little workout right here, and then I always want to take and reward the lamb, loosen up the halter a little bit, make sure it's still in the proper position. It's not rubbing on his eyes anywhere. And part of that, we have to look at the length of the halter right here across the bridge of their nose. Okay? So we have lots of halters at the house that we use as the lambs get older. Okay? And so in today's time, not only do they need to walk on a halter, but they need to walk with your hand. And so just to give him a little rest, what I like to do is just start walking him. Okay? So I'm going to leave my halter on there, and you're just going to tap on his tail. Somebody can walk behind. It doesn't take long, but besides teaching him to walk on a lead rope on a halter, we want him to walk with his head up. And so we spend a lot of time working around the pen. So we'll do that and make a couple trips around the pen. Then we're going to come back and remind him what this halter is. And it's just a little bit of gentle pressure. I like to start on these lambs when they're small. As soon as I get them, we're going to start. Because if I'm going to play tug of war with this guy, if he's weighing 60 pounds or 50 pounds, it's a lot easier to teach him versus one that gets older. We're just going to put a little gentle pressure on there and make him kind of keep working with us. All right. We got any questions out there, Dottie? Anybody while we're working on this guy?
Yeah, Dr. Ramsey, those are certainly some great tips to get us started with new lambs. Speaking of having a buddy to help you when the going gets tough, we have lots of friends watching with us right now. And I just want to remind them to share this post, because when they do, then their buddies at home and across Facebook get to watch along with us and learn all about what you're going to be talking about today. Dr. Ramsey, we actually did have somebody answer your first question that you started us off with. They said that CD&T would be the first thing they'd give.
That's right. That's a good thing. They were paying attention on our last one. So we're
There
going to
you
give
go.
a little advice on equipment, and it doesn't have to spend a lot of money on, but if you're going to show lambs, one thing that I suggest that you buy one of these little racks. Our lambs will spend a lot of time in these racks. Now, there's all kinds of things out there that help train these lambs, but I can tell you the best thing that helps train those lambs is standing in a rack with their head up or standing tied to a fence. And so it all takes time. The earlier that you do it, the smaller, the more efficient you can be with your time. And once you get them broke, it doesn't take a whole lot extra to keep them in the groove. Another thing that I would recommend is if you want to get them broke, and take them to a show. There's lots of little jackpot shows that are going to be starting up now. You know, you don't have to have them 100% ready. We used to take them to a show. I can get more accomplished by taking a set of lambs to his jackpot show than I can spending about 2 weeks with them at the barn. Okay, you learn how to use a drench gun. They learn how to be on a halter. They learn how to be tied up. They learn how to stand in the rack. And starting out, what our rule of thumb was these guys would stand in a rack somewhere around 20 minutes a day. We'd take them off, we would go walk them, we'd bring them back and set them in the rack. We like to keep their legs set, so as they're standing there, if they move their feet, we set their feet back where they're supposed to go. And so over time, they learn that there's a certain way that they're supposed to stand. And so these racks are all adjustable. You can move them up as the lambs grow, but this is a good investment to put into your sheep program. Now, Dottie, here's the secret, okay? One of the best investments that I can tell you to do is this mirror. And so we'll pan over, I guess y'all can see this mirror. This will save lots of arguing at the barn, okay? And so when we were showing, I've been showing sheep since I was 9 years old. We would still get in arguments at the barn on who was right and who was wrong. But once we got that mirror, that cost and did away with a lot of those different arguments, okay? And so if you watch around somebody remodeling their home, Hobby Lobby runs them on sale. You know, it's easy to find just a cheap old mirror. It doesn't have to be that big. That one, a neighbor was remodeling their house. He gave it to me. We glued it to a piece of plywood, and that's what stays in the barn. And so every sheep is going to be a little bit different when we start talking about showmanship and how we're going to show them, okay? So halter breaking, standing is all the big things that we want to get these lambs to do at the very beginning. The other thing that we want to do so what we're going to do now, once we start halter breaking, once we get these lambs where they'll walk, okay, we'll walk them. Once they get to breathe a little hard, we'll take a little break. And we're going to set them up and teach them how to brace. And so they may not do it at the very beginning. One thing, when you're picking out your lambs, I always like to try to find those lambs that will brace naturally, okay? Now, they may not all be perfect, but if you get one and he runs backwards in a stiff neck, that means he doesn't want to give you his neck, then go look for another one, okay? If they don't want to push, a simple tap on the rear or backing them into a fence will work as well. If you have one that doesn't like to do that, a lot of times you see that blocking table in the mirror over there. A lot of times what we'll do is set these guys up on a blocking table. And the reason I like to use a blocking table is if they step off, okay, then that gives them some uncertainty. But you always want to reinforce that when you are working with it. Okay, you want to be careful. Once they figure out that there's not anything back there, then they're probably going to brace and push harder for it. Right? Now, sheep are semi-intelligent, okay? And a lot of times they will figure out that, hey, when I'm up here, I have to push, but when I get down here on the ground, I don't. So maybe you want to dig some holes in the ground. We had a track where we would go out and walk our lambs around. We would have holes in the ground. So that sheep never knew where he was. And we would push that lamb, set him up with his back feet next to that hole and brace him. And he would step off in it if he took a step back. So he was always being challenged every time we would go out and walk those lambs. The neat thing about this mirror is that when you look at this lamb, you can look at him in the mirror and the exhibitor can see what they need to fix. Okay. Do I need to see it, his feet further back? Okay. Every lamb is going to be a little bit different on where we need to put his front feet, how far, how wide we need to put his back feet. The beautiful thing about the mirror, and that's where you get an advantage, is that you can see that. The exhibitor can see that. And you don't have mom and dad yelling at you, move the front leg back. No, the front leg's fine. You can see it right here in the mirror because every lamb requires a little bit different. And so we talk about getting these lambs set. We talk about how every little lamb has strengths and weaknesses. When we look at them in this mirror, that can show us the strengths and that can show us the weaknesses on those lambs. And you can play with, how do I need to move his feet? Where do I need to put his front feet? Okay. Does he want to get a little higher in his top? And if he does, then that means I may need to put his front feet a little farther forward. Okay. How does he look on his back feet when we're standing him here? Does he want to turn in or turn out? Do I need to work on trimming some feet? Those are all things that we want to look at when we've got this lamb in the mirror. Okay. How are we doing, Dottie? We got any questions? Anybody got any comments?
Yeah, we're doing great, Dr. Ramsey. We have folks watching with us from South Texas clear to Northern California, and I know they're going to get some great questions coming in soon. Certainly, you're going over some great tips. I have a question for you. I know you mentioned that typically you guys would work your sheep for about 20 minutes a day. Do you have any tips for if there's a better time of day, you know, morning or evening, before or after you feed? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I think the main thing is that you're working them. We always like to work them before we fed. And so when we would put our lambs, we would go out and work them. And so I said I had three things. So our mirror is our one trick to the trade. Our rack is the other one. And we also had a walker. And this was like a merry-go-round for sheep. Okay, it's like a miniature horse walker that we would put those animals on. We could put 8 sheep at a time on that walker, and they would walk on that walker. Now, in order to do that, you have to have them halter broke very well before you put them on that walker. And so those things actually help speed up the process. And so we would work each of those lambs. When we put them on the rack, they're going to stand in those racks about 20 minutes. Depends on, you know, if your rack's in the sun or if it's in the shade. But we were going to work those lambs anywhere about an hour a day. And so the beauty of having that walker is I could put several lambs on there. They could be walking. I could take one off. We set up in front of the mirror, see how he looks. And we always had the radio playing. So everybody, one question I always get, people want to know, how long do I need to brace that lamb? These guys are athletes, okay? We're training them. And so the more endurance, the more work that we can do, the better their stamina becomes when I am bracing those lambs. And so we had a rule as we progressed throughout the year. There was a radio in the background. Okay, I don't know too many teenagers that like to go to the barn and don't have their ear pods in or have a radio blaring somewhere. We wanted those lambs to hold that brace for about 2 songs, and that was equivalent of about 6 minutes. And so when you're in the drive and that lamb has to stay stuck, 6 minutes is a good number, okay? Or you're up there in the top of the class. And so that was one way that you don't have to look at a clock, but you could set those lambs up and brace them. All right? And so as we look at this lamb, the same kind of deal. We're going to put him up here, and we're going to start out. On these little guys, it may only work, 10 or 20 minutes. As they get bigger, we're going to increase that time to increase their stamina. Now, we use the blocking table initially just to teach them where they know to step and back off, all right? once we get them trained, we won't continue to lose that blocking table. I've seen some people that like to use a ramp. Okay, they go up on an elevated platform and set those sheep up, and all of those type of things work. Lots of different things that we can use. The key is getting your hands dirty and coming out here and setting these lambs up. And so you can tell when you get out here on this side, the way his feet go, he braces naturally. And when we get him up here, he's good on his feet and legs. We talked about that in our selection. Let's see what how he leads around. Okay, so you got to remember, these guys haven't had a halter on them. So we're going to start walking them around. We're going to keep a hold of them pretty close, okay? And just take it easy with him. And then after he goes for a little ways, turn him back this way and then set him up, okay? We're going to stop him. We're going to get a hold of his head, and we're going to set his back legs. This lamb is one of those that does it pretty naturally, okay? And so one thing that you can see that we want to work on is that we want these lines to be straight. We want his front feet to come straight down. We want his back legs to have that good natural curvature. And as we go through here, we want to make sure they set up. Now, we want them to push and brace and look good, okay? Now, some of our lambs that have more muscle may not have to push as hard. Some of the lambs that don't have as much muscle may need to push harder. But one of the things that you want to remember is that when the judge is feeling of them, that is when you want them to really brace, okay? When the judge is back on the profile, that's when we're kind of posing, okay? That's when we want to get a good silhouette of those animals. That is where the mirror comes into play. You can see and you know, how hard do I need to push to make him look his best? Because I practice it in front of the mirror, and that way when I'm out there in the ring, I know exactly what that lamb is looking like, and I don't have to have, I don't have to worry about having somebody over there on the side of the ring giving me instructions. All right? So we got him. This lamb is pushing plenty hard. We want him firm. Now, one thing that I've seen that's becoming a kind of an issue is when we are walking these lambs in the show ring, and if you have a lamb that gets his top up, okay? If he wants to get his top up just a little bit, grab that lamb over here and we'll walk him. All right? One of that okay. Now reach up and hit his top. All right? So one thing, that's good. This lamb doesn't do it, okay? But sometimes you see lambs that get a hump in their back, and you'll see our exhibitors reach there and hit them. And so one thing I know a lot of the judges made comments on from the stock shows this year is, why are those people hitting those lambs on their back? Okay? And what you're doing, I know what you're doing, you're trying to get that top down on that lamb. But the problem is you're just drawing more attention to it. And plus, if you're sitting there hitting on them on the back, then they're going to get jumpy, and it's not a good image that we want to portray out there to the industry. So if we need that lamb to push a little harder, we need to wake him up, okay? Bring that one over here, Emma. Hey, stay back over there. You see how this lamb, he wants to get his top up just a little bit, okay? And so it's one thing, what we want to do is reach over here, kind of touch him a little bit, right? But I see lots of people pounding on him like that into the show ring, and that's not what you want to do. If I need to wake that lamb up, we want to teach that lamb to have cues, okay? We want to teach him from the time this little guy, bring him over here and set his feet. This big lamb is driving really good. So I like to try to find, normally when I'm walking these lambs, they're going to have one leg that's dominant, and that's the one where a lot of times they'll want to stop. It's not as important to set both feet, okay? Reach back there and set the foot that you need to set, and that makes him look good. And you only have to set one, and that makes you faster, because a lot of time the judge wants to see that lamb. And that's one critical thing, is that when we're in the show ring, the judge is trying to make decisions, and it's hard for him to make a decision when you're not ready. And so you can see both of these lambs are set very well. They're pushing. Now, if that lamb, if I need to give him a cue, all right, maybe I'm going to reach down here. I've got him. My cue at the house is I'm going to tap him here on the side. If he's not pushing hard, okay, I don't want to draw attention away from my lamb. I don't want to reach up here and smack him on the tail, all right? And so a great way to do that is tap him right here on the side. All you're trying to do is wake him up, and he knows that is his cue. So as you start at an early age with these guys, give them a cue. Now, here's a question that I often get. My lamb wants to spin around. Okay, when I brace him, he wants to spin one way or the other. And a lot of times, what the problem is, okay, we're going to have a step, okay? And it's like a dance. We stop, we set our back feet, 1, 2, 3, okay? And so this lamb is already learning that that is the steps. So we're going to do the same steps every time. It's repetition. Anytime, I don't care if you're training a lamb, a goat, a steer, or a horse, it's all about repetition. That's how animals learn. Okay? So we're going to bring him, we're going to do our repetition, we're going to set him up, and then we're going to lean into him and ask him to push. Okay? So we move that leg, we're going to set it back. Okay? And so when I'm on the profile, I want to pose. Okay? I want him to look smooth. I want his lines to look level and straight. Now, when the judge comes up and wants to handle this lamb, that's when I want his muscles to be popping even more. So if the judge is coming down and he's going to be handling Emma's sheep right here, now is the time I'm going to wake my lamb up. I'm going to tap him on the side. That's the cue that I really want him to perform. And so when he hears that, or he feels that little signal right there, he knows it's time to really push. Now, the other thing is make sure and keep this lamb straight. And one of the problems that we talk about is not straight. If you've got a lamb and he wants to move, oftentimes if I'm turning his nose one way or the other, then his body is going to follow that nose, okay? And so it's important, all right? If your lamb is spinning on you when you're trying to set him up and show, there's probably a good indication that you're not keeping the lamb in line, right? And so it's very important that we keep this line straight all the way down his back. Okay? How we doing, Dottie? Anybody got a question out there or comment?
Yeah, we're doing great, Dr. Ramsey. We have about 100 folks watching with us from lots of different states around the country. And I know that they're enjoying this and getting as much out of it as I am. I do have a question or a point, really. You talked about the differences in different types of lambs and knowing, what they do and what their certain, mannerisms or things that they do, like putting their top up and things like that. The same goes that there are just different types of showmen and different things work for different people. Wondering if you have any tips or advice for folks with either small kids or, up to seniors, and the difference between the size of the showman, maybe the strength and things like that.
Yeah, sure, Dottie. That's a great question. And so one thing on little kids, we talk about repetition, right? And so let me see this lamb right here. We're going to bring him out here. And if I've got a little kid, the big thing that we're going to do is work on repetition, all right? And so we stop our lamb. We're going to look, and a lot of times those little guys can't reach the back feet, okay? And so we're going to teach that lamb what we always call kind of the two-step, okay? We push one, we push again, there's two, and then pop, all right? And so we're going to have to train this lamb to put his feet when we push on him. And so we're not perfect, but all I have to do is reach back there and fix one leg, okay? And so we're going to walk him up. He did good. We're going to stop. we're going to put slight pressure, and this is again the repetition. 1, 2, pop forward. Okay, and so that's how we like to train with little kids. And after a while, this lamb will figure out that that's what he needs to do. Okay, and so you see lots of little kids out there, and people say, well, they can't show a big lamb. Sure, they can. It just takes a little more work at home to get that accomplished. Right? And so the main thing is to get that lamb broke, and then we need to get his head up, and they need to get where they can push. And so as we go along, it doesn't matter what they want to do or how they want to do it. You know, there's lots of different styles and methods to showing, but this part of your leg right here is going to fit into this part of the sheet, okay? With a little indentation right here. That's where we're going to put them. Okay? We're going to put our leg right here. And this leg gives the lamb something to brace on. My back leg is where I'm going to be pushing, okay? That is what's giving me the support to push forward. And so you see that? Get it in there? And so there's lots of different styles. I'll come over and get on. So watch how Kyle goes in here. We're going to keep the animal. These are 1, 2. Okay. So we're going to come in here. We're working on our lamb walking. And this is probably the most critical thing that we're going to talk about is getting that lamb where he walks with your hands under his chin and he walks with his head up. That's critical. All of our judges nowadays are going to be doing a lot of the judging on the move. And so we got the lamb set. You can see how he's got his toe turned out. He's got this part of his thigh, then there's this smooth part right here. There's a little indentation where that lamb fits into your leg. Then he's got his leg turned back here. And that's the brace that he can push off of on that lamb. Okay? Notice we've got our leg straight, coming straight down. The neck is coming at a good 90-degree angle. We want his head up. We don't want to get his nose up in the air. We want to try to keep that nose level. We've got our feet. Okay? All 4 feet are square and wide. And so this is a way that we want to train these lambs. And again, it's just repetition. Once we get the lamb trained, then we're going to start doing more of it without the halter. All right. So we've talked about, we'll do a little recap. A couple big items. Make sure that your halter fits your lamb. There's lots of different types and styles of halters. Okay. Don't let that halter come off. And just for a case in point, you know the difference in some of these halters. Look, you can see on this lamb, on these young lambs, the nose band, how much wider the nose band is. Okay, and that is not adjustable. So you got to have a halter that fits his nose, because if you don't, and it comes loose, and you're not out there. And so I can tell them lots of horror stories, right? We tied the lamb up, and then all of a sudden the nose band comes off, and look, and it tightens up around his neck. Okay, and you go to the house, get a drink of water, and come back, and your lamb is not going to be alive. The other thing that we want to talk about when we do use whatever kind of halter that we're using, again, it's going to go on, come out on the left side. You can tell it fits his nose. That way it's not going to get up in his eyes. Okay. So I'm going to walk up here. You may have to move around with me before you can see this. I'm going to tie this lamb up. Okay. So in this particular one, this is not the ideal place to tie a lamb to. Okay. And so I want to either go around it, and then I can tie it up close, and I can use my snap. But one problem that I don't like about this situation is what? If this lamb isn't fully trained, or even if he is, and if he jumps, okay, he can still hurt himself. All right? So we want to make sure that we can tie that lamb where his head is down, okay? So if you can go under it, that would be better. And if you want to tie a slip knot, however you want to do it, okay? I'm going to tie it up close so he doesn't have a lot of play right here between where I'm tying him and his head, right? Because if he gets spooked or startled, he's up here close where he can't hurt himself. Versus if I do this, and I see this a lot of times, okay, I just tied him up like that. And somebody runs by or something spooks him, he's got a lot of line left here, okay? And if he does and he jumps, he can hurt himself really bad, right? And so all of these things, what I'm trying to tell you is I've seen the negative outcomes when lambs getting hurt because you tied them up with too much slack on the line. Okay? So we've given this guy a pretty good little workout. He's breathing hard. That's what you like to see. Then we're going to go put him back in the pen. It doesn't take a lot, okay, to get these guys gentled down just a little bit every day, every other day, consistent working. And before long, if you keep the repetition, right? I'm a big kid. I can reach back here. I'm not going to mess with both legs. I'm going to find the leg that needs to be moved, right? And if I need to push him over, let's say he doesn't want to put that leg down, okay? Then I'm going to use this hand to push. And when I push on him a little bit, he has to put that leg down or he's going to fall over. And so that's part of the repetition. When I get him up here, you can crouch down. Showing sheep is from your belly button to your knees, right? You're just using your hands to keep his head straight. So a lot of this, I'm going to crouch down, and even little kids, they can pick them up and do the little bump right there, okay? If we need to move one foot, you just move one foot. You don't need to move both of them. And so after a while, this lamb will get pretty good at it. He'll know where he needs to put it, whether we're doing it on the rack. We're going to take and walk him a little bit. Okay. So we've moved him around. Okay, I've got a little kid. We're going to do 1, 2. There we go. And then if you look down, I want to be able to see straight down and his foot and leg, everything line up. I get his head up, and we're posing on the profile with just a little bit of light brace. Okay. So showmanship is a huge factor in your success of your lamb project. And all it takes is the time at home, a few little tools. We've got our mirror, we've got our rack, and we can make a lot of progress getting these lambs ready. One thing that I do want to say, and I know it's a hard thing, is that you don't want to make pets out of these guys. When you make pets out of them, they become too much like humans, and then they want to get in trouble. So I always like those lambs to be just a little bit on the wild side, right? When I get a hold of them, then they're comfortable with me. If you get one that is a pet that follows you around and you're getting too gentle, when you get in the show ring, he's more worried about what's going on around him. He's not paying attention. I wanted them to be just a little bit on the wild side. They know how to lead, they know how to set up, but when we get them in the ring, they know me, okay? And so they're a little bit worried about what's going on. And they know I am the thing that is familiar to them. And so that way they're paying attention to me. And so you can hear them talking to each other. Oftentimes we call getting barn spoiled. And that's where taking them out to a show will get them out of the barn. You do the same routine. They sometimes want to get into the same routine. You may have to change your direction up that you're walking them. Okay? And so as we go through here, a couple little different things that we're going to talk about. See, we're going to have these guys halter broken body by the time we get done with this little training clinic. A couple different things, what to expect when you get to the show. Okay? And so there's lots of aspects to showmanship that we want to talk about. Know when your class is going to be called. Be ready to get up there prior to your class being called. and there's lots of different things that we need to talk to our kids about. And so at the beginning of the show, we always went up there and we want to look at the show ring. What does the show ring look like? Are there any holes or low spots in the show ring? How is the judge working the ring? Is he pulling sheep on the walk? Is he waiting and not pulling anything until we get into position lined up? Are they taking part of the class? You know, where do we want to be in the show ring? And so that's part of showmanship too. And that is practiced by going to jackpot shows. And so we would send the kids to the ring and they would come back and have to give a mini book report. And things that I want to know is the ring level? Okay. How many lambs is he taking in at a time? Is he pulling on the walk? Is he pulling from the first group? Is he pulling from the second group? We wanted to position ourselves so that we had the best advantage and make sure that that judge was seeing that lamb. The other thing is when they're walking in, okay, you need to watch the judge. You need to look for some eye contact with that judge, but you need to listen to the ring stewards. They're trying to keep a flow going. And so one of the things that we kind of see is that people are waiting too long to bring their lambs in. If you've got a good ring steward, he's going to be sending you as that judge is looking, okay? So rely on those ring stewards. But go out there and look at the arena. See where the low spot is. See is he walking them in? Is he pulling on the walk? Or is he not pulling anything on the walk? Those are all parts of showmanship that we often forget about. And so if you've got a youngster and you're teaching them, they need to go about 30 times and be in the ring, about 30 times before they're ready to go to a major show and have success. That judge, they've got about 20 seconds that they're going to have that judge's attention. And so if you don't have that lamb set up and presented, you're going to miss your opportunity. And so it takes a while so they have that ring presence and they know what's going on. And so take those kids out to some shows. That's a great way to get them, get these lambs and the kiddos trained. How we doing, Dottie? Let's give a quick question out. What breed of sheep am I holding? We'll test everybody, see if they watched any of the showmanship, the classification last
There
week.
you go, Dr. Ramsey. I know that they'll be getting their answers in soon. We'll wake them up a little bit, see what breed of sheep they think you're holding. But in the meantime, we did have a question come in on Facebook, and it has to do with helping exhibitors who maybe want to pull their lamb over their body a little too much. Can you speak to any tips regarding that?
Pull the lamb over their body. Not real sure what they're talking about. Overdrive. But if you get a lamb that likes to overdrive, okay, we've got one of those right here. We'll just happen to demonstrate. So we're going to have Kyle set this lamb up. And so this is one that wants to overdrive. And you never want these lambs. So what he wants to do is he's pushing too hard. Okay? He's pushing too hard. And so if you get a lamb that does that, these guys are really hard to show. And so what we have to do is loosen him up. And we kind of have to put him back in neutral because he's really on the overdrive. And you just barely want to get into him. Okay? And so that's part of the problem. You want to keep your body upright. Okay? I think that's what they're talking about. Is sometimes when I'm judging a show and I have somebody lean way over, okay, that are way over the sheep like this, you're taking away from the sheep. I cannot see him, okay? And so that way, you need to be back out of the way so the judge can see the animal. Okay?
That was definitely a good tip there, Dr. Ramsey. We got some clarification on the question, so maybe we need that sheep back. But what they're referring to is a smaller exhibitor that wants to pull the head and neck forward rather than, making that neck at a 90 degree and making it drive.
Okay. And part of that is just going to come with if they're doing it like that. Okay. And so what we want to do is teach those little guys, if they're a little kid, they may have to get down here and put their shoulder underneath this chin to get it up. Okay. Now, Kyle had to do that when he was 8 years old and showing, but now he's big enough to get up here and do it the right way. But whatever the animal will let you do, okay? And there's a couple of those little kids out there that I see them showing big sheep like this that weigh 170 pounds, and that little kid is maybe 50 pounds. It's all about work at home and training that lamb to repetition. And so if they've got to get up there and get their head on their shoulder and get that head up like that, that's one of those little tricks. But it just comes with doing your homework and doing your work at the barn before you get to the show ring. The show ring is not a place to train your lamb. If we're training them in the show ring, don't count on too much success. Okay?
That's exactly right, Dr. Ramsey. We have lots of folks saying Hampshire on the previous sheep that you asked the breed. So I think that they are right on point with that. We also have another question of how you would suggest walking the lambs into place.
That's a good question. Walking them into the ring. So there's lots of different ways to do that. And they're all part of its personal preference. I see a lot of people that walk their lambs with one hand underneath their chin. Okay. Now, if I'm the judge, that tells me you've probably spent a lot of time working on that lamb and you've got him trained really well. My problem is I never want to get that lamb loose in the show ring. And so to me, you got two hands. I like to have this hand right here behind his head. Okay. Here, I'll take him over here. So if I'm walking that lamb, I want this hand right here close. And again, this is just personal preference because I've seen too many times that if that lamb coughs or you're walking around the edge and somebody drops a book or somebody drops something or steps up to the side of the ring and spooks him and you're just holding on with one hand, then there's a good chance that he's going to get loose. Okay? And so as we're going here, I just like to have one hand somewhere up here on the back of the head. And it's all personal preference as you're walking around. And to me, it's whatever you practice at home. Now, you can do this, and that's good, but you just have to be ready. And again, a lot of that, Dottie, I think is just personal preference on the judge and the exhibitor. Good question, though.
Yeah, great explanation as well, Dr. Ramsey. You just explained to us how to walk it around the ring. A little more in-depth question that we have is how you would walk it into place when preparing to set it up.
So when we get up here, we've come in the ring. Oftentimes what's going to happen is they're going to line you up side by side. So I'm going to come into the ring. I walk here. First thing I'm going to do is set my feet. And I'm going to get in. I'm going to get my lamb in position. And I'm going to get his head up. Okay? And so I've got everything in line. So there's lots of different styles. I like that head up. Okay? And I like the ears to be natural, maybe just a little bit up. Some people you see, and again, pull those ears way up. To me, that's not natural on a sheep. You want to make that sheep look natural. All right? And so I've got him. I've got his head level. I've got his feet level. And once I get him set, okay, now depending on where the judge is, I don't want to wear him out at the beginning of the class. I'm going to get him set. And if the judge has 40 lambs to feel of, I'm not going to be driving on him the whole time. Okay? I'm going to have him set, and I'm just going to sit there and relax where he's in position. And it's important that I have great eye contact with the judge. And that's one thing we haven't really talked about. From the time you come in that ring, you need to be staring at that judge. You need to have what I call the eye of the tiger, where you're looking at that judge. And then your look, you're saying, here's a good one. You better find him. Okay? I've done my homework. He walks, he sets up, and you have my attention. I want your attention on my lamb. And so we're setting here. Now, if the judge is coming down and I'm handling the lamb here, I'm handling the lamb here. While I'm on this lamb right here, Kyle's going to make the move. He's going to wake that lamb up. He's going to give him that cue, okay? He's just going to tap him right here on the side. And just from doing that, that lamb muscle tone got hard. He's flexing, okay? And so he looks good. He feels good. And once the judge is back, I'm going to keep my eye on that judge. and hopefully I'm going to get pulled at that time. So if I get pulled, then we're going to go to the scale. Okay? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so, Dr. Ramsey. We have another question come in from one of our viewers on Facebook. And right now, as we are kind of closing on our time together, I want to remind everybody one last time to get your questions in, because we'll stay as long as we need to get those answered. So get them in for Dr. Ramsey. But someone has a question with something that I think we've all been frustrated with at one point or another. And they're interested in your tips on how to get a lamb to stop jumping when it's touched.
How to stop jumping. Okay, that's a hard one. And so that's one of those deals. If you got a lamb that's jumping, once he starts, you got to figure out, why is he jumping? Okay, is it because your belt buckle is hurting him right here? Is that making him jump? Does he have a stiff neck or a neck problem? Is he sore? A lot of times we talk about chiropractors and getting these animals adjusted. Sometimes we need it, if we're working and pushing and pulling on these guys, and that's the thing that you don't want to do. And I see a lot of problems with lambs that don't show, is all of a sudden, guess what? We get to the show, I've got a 165-pound lamb and he doesn't show. And so the week before the show, I'm really working on him. I'm pushing him. We're doing a lot of work. And guess what? By the time we get to the show, his neck is so sore, he don't want you messing with him. And so part of that is one of the reasons that they're going to jump. And so if you have one that jumps, it's just one of those deals. You're just going to have to brace him, okay, set him up. And whenever he jumps, we're going to have to hold him down, all right, or try to. And that's one of those deals. Sometimes you get super easy ones that show automatically, and then sometimes you get the hard ones. I don't have a good answer to breaking the one that jumps, besides it's just going to take you a lot more work.
You bet. I think we can all agree that those ones that are tough to handle make the good ones really nice, and you learn to appreciate those. Yeah, as we wrap up our time together, still just waiting on any last minute questions that anyone might have for Dr. Ramsey. In the meantime, I want to remind folks of a few things. Dr. Ramsey, today we had a great session on showmanship, but we've also talked about a lot of other things. Weeks prior, we've talked about nutrition and feeding. We've talked about health. We've talked about a lot of things. And folks who may have missed those in previous weeks can find those on our website at texasyouthlivestock.com, or just watch the previous Facebook Live recordings on our Facebook page, which is Texas Youth Livestock and Agriculture. So just want to remind them of that. And then also remind them of something that you alluded to earlier, which was our classification training. So many folks know that we had a new set of classification guidelines that went out this year. And so we had an excellent training maybe last week. I forgot how long ago that was, but we had it prior. And folks, last week, I'm losing track of time, but experts just like you, as well as many other experts and educators across our state, joined us to help describe and talk about those new guidelines with pictures. And we had a great presentation. That's also up on our website as well as on our Facebook page. So I just want to remind everybody to catch those if you haven't already. And also be sure to share. So you can still share this one, still share classification guidelines, because the more you do, the more other folks and exhibitors across the state get to watch it. So Dr. Ramsey, I think, are we going to be together next week?
We're going to be together next week. Talk about going to a major show, what we need to take, what's in our show box, preparations on our lambs, those type of things. That's the plan for next week. And so as a quick recap, I know we're out of time. The other thing is think about questions. And so a lot of times in showmanship, a judge may ask you different questions. And so all of this is going to tie together in our selection. We've talked about the parts, leg, loin, rack, and shoulder. These are ruminants, the 4 parts of a ruminant stomach. And to see if you're paying attention, a lot of times judges will talk about, hey, in the class, what did I like about this lamb? And he may come up and ask you, what do you like about this lamb, and what could you change about him to make him better? So those are all questions that you could ask your exhibitors and be thinking about during their little practice sessions. So it's been a good one. If you got any more questions, shoot us an email. We'll be glad to get back with you. If that's all, Dottie, I guess we'll see you next week.